How often do you check in on your soul? That's a weird question, I know, but in today's episode of The Written Compass, I'm excited to introduce you to Regyna Curtis. She is a soul wisdom mentor, speaker, author, podcast host, art channel. She's pretty cool, and I'm excited to talk with her today because we're going to talk about how she has used her creativity, specifically writing, to help develop her own internal wisdom. And she's going to share how she does that and supports other people just like you in developing their soul wisdom language as well. We're so excited you're here. Come on in and join us. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of The Written Compass. Shayna Hartman here, embodied writing coach. Super excited for today. As you know, most of the time, this podcast has been a solo podcast. I've been the main person that you have, we'll just hope, have enjoyed listening to. And I am starting to bring in amazing people who I have connected to for various reasons. They might be people on my team you've heard from. They might be fellow authors that I've been connected with, or just generally awesome people that use writing as an embodiment tool, as a part of who they are and how they show up in the world, as a part of their business, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to be doing this more and more. And so today I get to introduce you to an amazing person, Regyna. And Regyna, I love the way you, Regyna, describe yourself. This is straight from your website. She considers herself a soul wisdom mentor. Can we just say that again? A soul wisdom mentor, a speaker, an author, a podcast host herself, art channel, and the founder of, and I'm going to let you say your website because I realize at this moment, I have actually never said it out loud. And I want to make sure I say it right because it's important because it's your .com. So I'm going to turn it over. That's my initial introduction, but welcome, Regyna. I'm excited you're here. Say this beautiful word for us and then tell us a little bit more about it.
Thank you so much. It's at Maytree, and it is a word that I actually created. It comes from two Sanskrit words that I've fused together, meaning the first one is Atman, meaning soul or self, and the second Maytree, which means benevolence or kindness. And so it's really kindness towards your soul. And that's really the work that I do in my own life and the work that I do with others. So so I think that's a beautiful place to start. And so I'm Regyna. I'm a soul wisdom mentor and all those other things, an art channel, an author, etc. And what that really means is that I help people to really tap into the wisdom that comes through their authentic ways of being and knowing. And so that can look like intuition development. It can look like aligning with your cycles and rhythms, and much, much more, often using creativity and writing as a part of the process.
It's not a surprise that writing comes out of your work. Obviously, I think most people are familiar with the idea of writing being a creative outlet. And tell us about what you feel like, why and how does writing show up for you in your own soul wisdom work, and then the work you do with your clients?
Absolutely. So writing is so infused into who I am as a person. It was a long time in my life before I actually considered myself to be a writer or an author. It was always something that I felt was a part of my personal practice. I would journal or I would write things out as they came to me and then use that as the platform that I would then build from. And interestingly, when I started to tap into my ability of becoming an art channel, I always have been that. It's not necessarily that it was something I sought out, but as it really came into form, it kind of flipped in reverse. And so I receive messages through images. And then as I kind of integrate that, I then use a process of automatic writing to then really channel through and synthesize what those messages mean.
I love that. And tell us a little bit more about the idea, because I know the word channel can mean lots of different things for different people. But what does art channel mean for you?
Really, what it means is it's just a process of receiving information in a conscious way that is coming not from my analytical brain, but from something deeper or beyond that. And so a lot of times people kind of are introduced to the idea of being a channel as, someone who receives information from spiritual beings or multidimensional beings, but really that information can come through your higher self, your inner knowing, your intuition as well. It can come from many things. And human design is something that I actually work with a lot in my life and in my business. And if it's not something you're familiar with, it's really just a modality for understanding yourself, an introspective tool, so to speak. And I have an open throat center and an open G center, meaning that that's kind of like where your heart is. And so what that means is that I have this really fluid ability to receive information and process it through in a way that aligns with how someone else is going to receive it best. That's the simplest way to put it. And that's really what I kind of define as being a channel.
I love that. Yeah. And I think all of it, no matter what your understanding or not of kind of, well, I'll just claim most of the people that I'm connected with have an understanding that there are things beyond our physical,
Yeah.
human, logical understanding of the world. For me, that's God. For other people, it's so many different things, and I think it's all
Yeah.
beautiful. And so that idea of channeling, like, is accessing in some way that is not through the cranial brain, because when we go up there, this stuff doesn't make sense, right? Like it's
Right.
just not
Yeah.
whatever. But when we get connected within and just allow whatever shows up to show up and express that through art, through writing,
Mm-hmm.
like what gets to happen when we do that? And you might pull in some of the ways that you've talked about this. Regyna has co-authored a lot of books and has chapters, which we're going to talk about, but I'd love to kind of bring them in now. Like, how have you kind of explained the power of tapping into this, maybe through some of the books that you've been a part of and published?
Absolutely. Actually, I think these are a really great way of explaining that. So, I've contributed chapters to 3 multi-author books, and each one of them has a little different personality, I would
Mm-hmm.
say. But all 3 of them really are, at their heart, an explanation of the tangible path that I took to connect with this soul wisdom, right? And learn how to express that through the language that really aligns for me. So the first book that I did, Creativity is Whatever You Want It to Be. They all have long chapter names, so I may shorten them a little bit just as the title and not the subtitle. But in that book, it was really me exploring what I called my soul, the whispers from my soul, and
Mm-hmm.
learning to tap into what I call my soul wisdom language. And that was through the lens of creativity. It was talking about how all throughout my life, I've really received information through colors and lines and shapes. And as I travel the world, certain things will become really vibrant to me, and I would take photographs of that. I actually once I was getting a new phone, and the man who was uploading all the information into my phone for me asked me what I do for a living, because he said I have more photographs on my phone than anyone he's ever seen before.
Love
And
that.
yeah, he said the only other person he'd seen with even close to what I had was a journalist. And I said, "Oh, I'm a soul wisdom mentor." And he's like, okay, tell me more, but it is how I capture moments. And within those moments is a wealth of wisdom. And so it's through those kind of snapshots that we take, either physically or mentally or emotionally, or, continue on, that wisdom exists, and you can tap into that later by coming back and returning to those photos or memories. The second book that I did was Mystics Revealed. And in that, I went through and told a series of kind of micro stories. Some of them were a paragraph long, some of them were several pages, about my encounters with strangers, and how that really, those encounters with other people. And I use strangers kind of in a double meaning.
Mm-hmm.
They were strange encounters, and sometimes the experience was strange. Sometimes the person came across as a little strange, but each one of them led me to a belief and an understanding of something within myself. Sometimes those beliefs were supportive, sometimes they were not supportive. But really, it was just how the communication with others and the experiences that I have where I engage with others always come back and teach me something about myself. And so that's another layer of who I am and how I show up in the world. And then the third is called Nourished, and it's my most recent one. And it is a series of, this one's kind of a windy, twisty tale. It's an action story in some ways. And it's all about how I learned to read, understand, interpret the language of my dreams through a process of lucid dreaming. So, for anyone who's not familiar with that is, it's being aware that you're dreaming while you're dreaming.
Yeah.
And so it started when I was 6 years old. That's the first time I can consciously remember it. And then moving through a series of some crazy situations that have happened in my life, and how each one of those situations has really helped me deepen a trust in my own self and my ways of knowing and being, and to become more fluent in my soul wisdom language.
I love that. And I love, like, I just keep hearing that whole underpinning of connecting to you, further understanding you. And
Yeah,
what I think is so powerful for people to remember is writing is part of why I think people say, like, writing is so hard, is because you're literally taking the insides of you
yes,
and putting them on the outside.
yeah,
And it's not necessarily something, I don't think people, are born writers, but I do think we're all messaged beings. If that makes sense.
absolutely,
Like,
yeah.
we all have a voice. We all are here for a reason. We all have something to share. And it's what's so powerful. And I'd love to hear you too, like, what has writing, like the process, the actual act
Mm.
of, you talked about journaling, all that kind of stuff, like how has that shaped? What do you feel like your process is now? How is it still shaping and becoming? Because I know for me, like, it shifts and ebbs and flows
Oh yeah.
at different times. And what I want people to hear, what I think is so powerful about just what you're saying, is one, like, each of these chapters, and I hope everyone, again, will share in the show notes where to get these books. When you get to each of these books in these chapters, like, you're seeing someone trying to take this thing that they've been trying to understand. Like, a book is really an opportunity to just give yourself space to, like, try to make some meaning or understanding of whatever you've been experiencing on your journey. And it's not about, what I love too is, like, in that exploration you've learned about yourself more, you've learned to connect to yourself more, you've learned to make meaning of yourself more. And when a reader gets to experience that, right, like, it's an invitation for them to do the very same
Mm,
thing.
yes,
And it's not about Regyna going, this is how you do it, right?
right.
Or Shayna, or whoever, the books that we're reading. It's an opportunity and an invitation. So talk about, like, you've done these collaborative books, and I know, because Regyna and I have talked about this, that she does have her own Just Regyna book that is
Yes.
in the works, and we're gonna keep lovingly nudging that forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um, but tell us, like, what are some of the things that show up for you as a part of your process, especially now that you've done these collaborative chapters, these co-authored books? Like, talk a little bit about the good, the bad, the messy
Yeah.
of your
Yeah.
process.
So there's a lot of messy for sure.
Yay. Yay.
Um, I would say it's all good, but it doesn't always all feel good in the moment. And I think kind of looking at where my journey with writing began, what I thought I was going to say, just actually my soul wisdom kicked in and was like, no, you're going to tell this other story. So, um, Here's a great example of how sometimes what doesn't feel good in the moment, what feels like a bad situation, can actually become a really empowering thing in the future. So I would say that my journey with writing began very early in life. And when I say very early, I mean probably when I was about 4. So I have, I'm a one of 4 siblings. So I have 2 older siblings and 1 younger. And my 2 older siblings, especially my older sister, she's 7 years older than me. And we shared a room when I was about this age. So from about the time I was out of a crib until I was maybe 5, I think. And that's really influential because she was so much older than me, she did a lot of things that I wasn't really appropriate for my age level at that point. And yet I always found them to be really inspiring. So I asked her to teach me how to read and spell things. And I remember the first thing when she was teaching me, she said, "What do you want to learn how to spell?" And my first word that I wanted to spell as a probably 3 or 4 year old was unicorn. Um, so, I mean, this is me. Like, I
Right.
jump in, I go big. And yeah, so I remember that. And then she taught me the difference between dessert and desert was that strawberry
Mm-hmm.
shortcake has 2 S's. And I will never forget these things, right?
Okay.
So that was my first introduction into writing. It was inspiring. It was exciting. It was fun. It was
Playful.
well,
Yeah.
yeah. And then crash and burn, like complete opposite experience. I went to kindergarten, and I remember being so excited about education and learning because I'd been in this really loving space of my sister teaching me. And then I got into school and I went for my preschool. There was a test you had to do. I don't know if you
Yep.
still have to do this or
Uh-huh.
not.
Yep.
But I had to throw a beanbag back and forth, and we counted as high as I could count. And I remember the teacher's eyes like swirling and was like, "Okay, we've gotten to 100. Like, I see, yes, you're, you know," and she was so bored. And I was like, "This is fun. I can go higher." So anyway, I get into school, and most of my classmates were learning their alphabet, and I was spelling unicorn and dessert and strawberry shortcake and, like putting together sentences at this point. So I was bored. I was
Mm-hmm.
very, very bored. And I remember one day, I couldn't really articulate it at the time, but I remember standing in the kitchen and the bus had pulled up and I couldn't move my feet. Like there was this sinking feeling in my stomach and I wouldn't move. I couldn't move. And what kind of unfolded from there was my parents had to go have a teacher conference. And essentially, I was like, I don't want to play at school. I want to learn at school. I can play at home. I want to go to school to learn. And so they gave me homework because there really wasn't, this was in the early 80s,
Yeah.
there wasn't enough time,
Do more. Yeah.
yeah, to do more. And there were more kids, to process with and to teach. And so I got this homework. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to embrace it. I'm going to do this. I got my little Richard Scarry dictionary and I wrote this story about oranges. And then I was accused of cheating because I was told that my mother had helped me write it because it was beyond the basically the level that I should have been at. So
Yep.
from that point on, I think that's when I learned I'm not a writer. It's not a safe space.
Yeah.
Um, and it wasn't until I really started embracing my journal practice, probably in the mid 90s or so, whenever The Artist's Way came out. And that became like a really popular thing. I
Yep.
started doing morning pages, and, that's evolved over the years. And now it's something I can sit down and write 3,000 words, no problem, in one sitting because it's something that I do consistently all the time.
Yeah. I thank you for sharing that story. And it's no surprise to the people listening to this podcast because I've talked about it a lot where school just kind of, I don't want to fault, but it does us wrong in,
Yeah.
in so many ways. Your example of kind of what would be considered, quote, being ahead and having resources and having had access to reading and writing at an
Mhm.
early age in the home. That's not everybody's situation.
Right.
That led you to school not supporting you. And in the same way, when people come from different backgrounds and understanding of language and school, same thing, like
Yeah.
basically isn't able to support them. But I'm glad you found your way. It sounded like you had to find it on the outskirts of the traditional K through 12 educational setting, and
Yeah.
that is not, an uncommon thing. I haven't yet had anyone on here who has talked about how school supported their
Mm.
growth as a writer. We often have that one or two teacher moments where,
Yeah.
maybe there was something there. But, again, I just tiny sidebar of like, let's listen to this, people. Let's get this together. Let's figure out
Yeah.
how we can really support our kids in their literacy and not take it away from them, essentially, where they don't feel safe and it's not a safe space. But so here to now process is morning pages. You really know how to kind of channel and just let the words fly. So the
Mhm.
kind of age old question, right? You're writing this book, like, why does it not exist yet, Regyna?
So actually, I love that you asked that question and keep asking me that question because every time I answer, I'm like, yeah, this is inspiration for me to do it. But um, so there's one other piece of that journey that I'll summarize really quickly. It was basically that all throughout, whether it was high school, college, even as an adult in the workspace, I've always been encouraged to create an outline first and then fill in the rest of it, right? And I don't work that way. I
Mhm.
pour like the book that I'm writing, my solo book. I actually sat down one day at 7 in the morning, just starting my morning pages. And by 4 o'clock that afternoon, I'd had 8,000 words handwritten in a spiral notebook. My hand was numb. I had to, I just poured out of me.
Right.
And so the process of then trying to fit that into the structure of chapters and, you know, a manuscript and all the different pieces of it and trying to kind of like work backwards in that when everything I've always been taught is start with a structure, fill in the gaps. And I'm like, here's a whole lot of stuff. Now find the structure in it. And that has been a really big challenge and something that I still am overcoming. But doing these multi-author books has really helped me through a lot of that process by being able to kind of like do these bite-sized pieces where
Mhm.
3,000 words is really easy for me to write, like I said, and I can start with that and then kind of take that through the process. Whereas the thought of 10,000 plus words for a
Yeah.
full book and doing that feels still a little bit overwhelming, but I'm getting more accustomed to it.
Yeah. And my having just supported people in a multi-author book, that is sometimes people's gateway into their
Yeah,
own book. So hear that, pay attention for those of you who are trying to get yourself out there. And you want to publish a book, one step towards that can be getting to be a part of a project that is multi-author. And that is a very common, and inviting thing for people to do. So reach out if that's something that you're interested in. I can support you if it's not through the work that we do. I have other people and places to point you and colleagues who do that more frequently. Mine's just sort of been a every now and then that has come up. And I love that. And then what is interesting too is that whole, I need a blank in order to write the book. And
yeah,
I really push against that idea that you have to have an outline. I see so many things and ads and whatnot of like, follow this template. And,
hmm,
it's a plug and play. And I do think there is a need for that. For some people, that makes total sense and that works. But there is a place for the people where it's like, no, that is a pair of shoes that absolutely do not fit. And in fact, will be uncomfortable. And in fact, will make me not want to go out and walk or be, you know what I mean?
yeah,
I think we need to encourage and realize like, I know you've got your book probably completely written. It's now just like that matter of getting another set of eyes on it to say, here's chapter 1, here's chapter 2,
yeah,
or not some other structure, right? That's the thing too, is when we're writing and we're doing our own publications in so many ways, like what what do these words want to form? Like what do they want the shape to be? I think that's a really powerful approach too. So I know there will be other people who resonate with the way you're talking about writing and the way you're talking about your process. So I'm glad that you shared that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So tell us, Regyna, what are the different ways that you can that people can connect with you and reach out to you if they want to get connected after this?
Absolutely. So everything's connected through my website. You can pretty much get to anything from there, or through my link tree, which is connected to my Instagram. Everything is at Maytree. It's ATMAITRI. So either at Maytree, at Maytree.com. And one thing that I'd recommend for anyone who's kind of curious about what soul wisdom is or soul wisdom language is I have a quiz on my website that's figuring out your soul wisdom language. And then I have some practices that come at the end of that in a downloadable PDF. So that's a really great way to start to get familiar with it and play around with it.
Beautiful. So we will make sure these show notes, check out the show notes. They will have all of this information, as well as how to access Regyna's books and just to get connected with her, because you're pretty awesome and cool.
Oh,
and
thank you.
I want everyone who needs you to make sure they have access. That's part of why we do this. And I'm excited to come and play on your in your podcast land as well very soon.
Absolutely. Yay. I'm so excited to have you. And yeah, thanks to everyone who's listening. And just know, I think, I just feel like I want to say, know that you can do it your way, and it's still, can be a nourishing process for you. And it's just that process of finding the right support for it.
I love that. I love your way, or a way versus the way, because there is no one or the way. We all are unique and beautiful, and we love the idea of just finding the path that helps you be more authentically you. Well, thank you so much, Regyna. This was super fun, and I know we'll be in touch soon. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Be sure you go and check out the quiz and check out all the links in the show notes. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Written Compass. If you are enjoying this content, do me a favor and go and review the podcast. This allows me to share and get these messages out to the people who really need them, who we want to read their books in the future. You can also go and share your thoughts and tag me at Shayna Hartman _ on Instagram. Again, this is just a way for us to get connected and share the writing love. And if you know that you are ready to write your book, that message that's been burning inside of you for a long time, then I want to talk to you. My team and I want to talk to you. Head on over to shaynahartman.com and click Work with Us. From there, you'll see an application to explore and see if writing your book is your next best step.